computer.
Here we go.
Okay, greetings from the Florida Keys. My former coworker, Laura Shook, says the Florida Keys never disappoint. So let's see whether you guys are disappointed or not. So there's a picture, there's a map of the Keys. And why would somebody want to live in the Keys is the theme. And this is my name. And 1,700 islands in the
Wow.
Florida Keys. 800 are generally recognized, which means they have names, and then 45 of these are inhabited or easily accessible. So let's look at some old history of the Keys. The original inhabitants were these Indians here, and they, of course, lived off fish a lot. And then Ponce de Leon charted the Keys in 1513, and the word key comes from Cayo, which means small island in Spanish. All right.
Hmm.
And there's good old Ponce or Ponce. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Ponce.
Ponce. All right.
Ponce.
All right.
Ponce de Leon.
Henry Flagler. All right. We're going to talk about him. He was the founder of Standard Oil. Well, what did he have to do with the Florida Keys? We go with his wife contracted tuberculosis. They were in Ohio, which is where Standard Oil started. And the doctor suggested that his wife visit Florida. So they went to and they visited St. Augustine, which is a charming town, but had lousy hotels. So this guy, Henry, started putting nice hotels into towns in Florida, working his way south. And to connect all these Florida towns, he built a railroad. I mean, he had all this money. He was the founder of Standard Oil. So he built this charming town. And then he sort of like he created St. Augustine, Daytona Beach, Palm Beach, became known as the father of Miami, Florida. This guy was really, really busy. And his name, he gets called Flagler. Flagler's name is used in the Folly Society, Flagler's Folly. That is the history foundation of the Florida Keys. Oh, where did this come from? Flagler's Folly. Well, this was the rail network that ran down the Florida's east coast. He decided to extend the railroad to Key West, and that was called the Folly. But it made a big change to the Keys, a huge change. Okay. And this is a book written about him, The Rise and Fall of the Railroad That Crossed an Ocean. Because that railroad had to go 100 miles through to get to Key West. Okay. So how is Key West making money? Something is an example is cigar factories. They had 30 of them and over 200. Okay. And this was a very dull work, very dull work. So each factory had a lector. This was a guy up here, and the people working in the factory. This was an idea that was imported from Cuba. The guy would just read to people as they rolled tobacco. Yes. So they sat on a raised platform and whatever they could get a hold of. Anna Karenina, political treaties, the newspaper, and they were paid by the workers, not by the cigar rolling company. Now, the big change that happened because of the railroad, Flagler's Railroad, was you could now have tourism in the Keys. So this is the big change. And so the railroad came in 1912, finished it to Key West, and it just was a marvel. It had 120 miles. Most of it was ocean that it was going over. It was known as the eighth wonder of the world, and it just had to be incredible. 7 years to build. Today's dollars, 1.8 billion. 1.8 billion. And 4,000 men worked on it at any one time. Here it is arriving in Key West. Okay. But the hurricane of 1935 severely damaged this railroad, and it
Wow.
never reopened. So Flagler sold it for peanuts to the county. He just got rid of it. Okay, so here's what the hurricane did. It
Oh
just
my God.
messed up stuff. Uh, and how they got rid of this, I don't know. The hurricane of 1935, also known as the Labor Day hurricane, was the strongest hurricane to hit the United States. Okay, estimated winds were 200 miles per hour and considered the most intense hurricane to make landfall. And here's Fort Lauderdale newspaper, heavy life loss. Very sad. The life lost were mostly World War I veterans. They were working in 1935, the WPA, for building a road that was going to parallel the railroad. And the last train, the train that was supposed to come and take them to safety, never showed up. So they died. So about 300 of the 400 people who died were these veterans. They were working on building a road. And here's their monument, their graves, not really their gravestone, but their monument. Shows you trees in the wind as it blows. So now the railroad has basically gone out of business, and you're going to build the highway. So guess what? All you do is have to pave over where the railroad was, and you got a couple of gaps to deal with, but you have this overseas highway. It's called the Overseas Highway, and it's also known as Route 1, and it's mile 0 in Key West. All right, now it ends the Route 1 ends in Fort Kent, Maine. So you're traveling a big road. Okay, so you're going to connect the overseas highway. You're going to connect Key West to the mainland with 113 miles of road and 42 bridges, which means there are 43 islands involved. And the overseas railroad has been turned into a highway. So this is what you deal with. You just pave over this, and you've got a highway. Okay. When I've experienced a number of hurricanes when I was a kid, and it's just like you just wait for the worst. You wait for your electricity to go off. You have dry ice, so your refrigerator will keep things cold, and you make certain that you don't get fooled by the eye of the hurricane, which comes through. And that's what happened in Miami. Big destruction to Miami because people thought the hurricane was over. They came outside. It was just the eye of the hurricane, and that's what was really bad in Miami. Anyway, they built this highway in 1938, and they replaced it in the 1980s with a wider and safer bridge system. So you had the original highway left unused, so you could do things with it. Here's an example of what you could do. The example is, of course, that the highway that has the big gap in it, or the structure that has a big gap in it, is not the current highway, US 1. US 1 is over on the left. That thing's over on the right. But and wherever you can, they have the two side by side. So you use them as fishing piers and walking paths. And here's an example of a fishing station on the old Route 1, the Overseas Highway, and the new Route 1. On also the celebrity, we have Fred the Tree. Fred the Tree is on the old highway, growing out of the cement. And it's a celebrity tree. It's an Australian pine, grows out of the old bridge, and mysterious elves come and decorate Fred during the holidays. Yes, so there he is. We're going to look at some of the islands. We're going to go starting with Key Largo. And I don't know if you ever watched the movie The African Queen with Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn. And of course, is about a boat. And the boat was, the film was made in East Africa mostly. And the boat, when the movie was over, the boat worked with cargo and it worked with missionaries. And it was finally moved for some reason to Key Largo in 1982. The boat that was in the movie was restored and it now gives tours in the area because there are canals in Key Largo. You can take people down. So you ride the famous steamboat, the African Queen. Yes. And the captain may let you steer the boat if you look reliable. Yes. And here's what the canal looks like in Key Largo. Tavernier, that's where you find the blonde giraffe. Okay, the blonde giraffe is a key lime pie factory. Key lime pie factory. Factory is an exaggeration. It's really a pie shop, but in any event, it's key limes are what the Keys are known for in the way of fruit. And this place has been voted the best in Florida. And it has a serenity garden where you can enjoy your treat. And they do frozen chocolate dipped slices. So they've taken their key lime pie and they've dipped it in the chocolate. Not sure that this is not the kind you would dip.
Oh.
Right. Here's your question. Why are limes sold unripened? These are all unripened limes. Why are they sold unripened? Anybody know? Because when they ripen, they turn yellow, and you don't know whether it's a lemon or a lime.
Ah, okay.
So they're sold unripened. There we go. And here's Indian Key. Oh, used to be a thriving island. That's what all that's all you can see of it. It's the ruins of an 1800s town. Okay. The whole island is on the National Register of Historic Places, and it has the ruins of a town that existed in the early 1800s, and people made their living salvaging boats that ran aground on the local reefs. There's lots of reefs and lots of chances for boats to get caught on them, and then these people go out and they are called wreckers, Wreckers, and they go out and they salvage the boats. Here's the town, or here's what's left of the town on the island, and little signs saying what was there, okay. Here's I just threw this in. I just like cormorants, and I just thought that's a neat photo. So the wreckers, they had to lift the grounded ship. The ship was grounded. They have to take the cargo offloaded. There was a big warehouse on this little island, Indian Key, and then they moved everything to Key West. And when Key West, here they are salvaging stuff. At Key West, they would decide how much the wrecker would be paid for their services, usually about 25% of the cargo. This made Key West the richest city per capita in the United States, the 1830s and 1840s. Okay. Now, the Indian Key Massacre, what caused the town to disappear? A bunch of Seminoles came over, 600 of them in 1840, burned down the town, killing 16 people. They took lots of loot back to the mainland, and that ended the wrecking business on Indian Key. That's why you see all these ruins, because of the Seminoles. It was the Seminole War. And here they are. This is a scene or a picture, an illustration of that massacre. Now, Islamorada, it's where you can go to feed tarpon. A tarpon is a fish. It can be a very big fish, and you feed the tarpon by hand. You get a bucket of bait for $5, and you try to feed the fish. The pelicans will vie with the tarpon. If you've ever seen a tarpon dive for fish, it flies along and then dives directly 90 degrees turns. It makes a dive 90 degrees. It doesn't even go at a slant, it goes straight down. Anyway, you better get your hand out of the way if a pelican is heading towards you. But you'll be able to feed the tarpon by hand. Here's someone who is not worried about
Oh,
pelicans there. What is the tarpon? Something that you don't eat because it's not nice. It's got lots of little bones and it's oily and it tastes like soap. And nowadays you're worried about mercury, but it's a great sports fish, a great sports fish. They're acrobatic and they can reach 8 feet long and 300 pounds. And they are catch and release because nobody eats them. They're a non-food species, but they're thrilling for people who go fishing. There we have a tarpon that is fighting. It's Marathon. Marathon is where you'd find the turtle hospital. Yes, there's a turtle that's in a pool being looked after. And what kind of damage can a sea turtle have? It can get tangled in discarded fishing line and can't swim, can ingest plastic bags and who knows what plastic and can't eat. And some turtles are hit by speeding boats and they have cracked shells. So now the fishermen bring in the injured turtles when they see one. But when they can't, the hospital sends out a turtle ambulance. It's got kayaks and netting to bring in the turtles to the turtle hospital. Yes, rehab. They've saved over 1,500 turtles from death. The turtle hospital. Big Pine Key. Big Pine Key is where you'll find the Grimo Grove breadfruit farm. Come on. I don't know if you've been around breadfruit. I was visiting a friend in South America who had breadfruit trees near his house. And wow, when a breadfruit hits the ground, it's like thunder, like a big thud, a big thud. So anyway, there's this farm that grows breadfruit. Obviously, it's imported from the Pacific coast of the Pacific countries, and it was originally a farm run by a researcher. He died. Other people have taken it over. And here is a picture of breadfruit. There's a knobby kind and a smooth kind. And it's nutrient rich. It's a superfood. My local supermarket in Massachusetts used to carry it. And I used to cook it all the time. I used to boil it. And it tastes like bread, basically. So you eat it as a starch. And so it can be used. And here's the guy who currently runs it, and he was there at the Grove when he created this dedicated breadfruit grove, the only one in the United States. Hurricane Irma destroyed all the trees except one steadfast tree. So 2017, he's grown all his trees from the breadfruit, which is a seed basically, that has dropped to the ground. So that's pretty impressive. He's done more than provide breadfruit because he doesn't, not everybody eats breadfruit, but a lot of people drink vodka, and that vodka is made from breadfruit. Okay.
oh,
And also on that key is the National Key Deer Refuge. The key deer, there's a key deer, baby,
oh,
cute, and it's small. It's the smallest deer. It's a relative of the regular deer. So it's a deer refuge, a key deer refuge. It's run by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they're just approachable, and people do like it. However, here is what a local says about these deer. Okay, tourists can cause a lot of traffic, especially if there's a key key deer in sight. They're quite a nuisance. One is on the roadside. Tourists will stop to take pictures of the stupid deer. That's a local talking. All right. And when this local, she's right. They are quite a nuisance. They run around. They're all over the place. Well, like deer here. Well, now we're at Key West. Okay. So let's look at some animals in Key West. And those, here's Key West. Well, greetings. Gypsy roosters in Key West. The gypsy rooster is a feral rooster that roams around town anywhere it wishes, like it owns the town. And they are free, they roam freely, but they mostly enjoy visiting open air restaurants. You're not supposed to feed them, but they're bold, so you have to watch out. You can find that a rooster will figure out how to take your food from your hand, from your fork, may sit at your table on one of the chairs, whatever. And it may attack the back of you if it doesn't like you for some reason while you're walking away from it. So they are bold. They are bold. And they're everywhere in Key West. Okay. Well, here's the Republic. Key West has a name. Key West seceded from the United States. Seceded from the United States. And this is the airport. Notice the big sign, whoops. Welcome here to this Republic. And the smaller in black lettering right below this is welcome to Key West. Welcome to this Republic. All right, so how do we pronounce the word C-O-N-C-H? Anybody know?
Conch.
That's correct, conch. So there's a song for the Conch Republic. Glory, glory, Conch Republic.
I have seen the glory of the sunshine and the sea. Right here upon our island where we love to live so free. But in April 1982, the peace was not to be. We went rolling on. Glory, glory, our Republic. Glory, glory, our Republic. Glory, glory, our Republic. And we went rolling on. They were setting up the checkpoint between the mainland and the Keys. They had put a U.S. border where it shouldn't ought to be. That's when we seceded and declared our sovereignty.
Okay, they seceded because of a checkpoint. This was a checkpoint that the federal government put to check for drugs entering the Keys. And with that, there was a giant backup, and it became very unpleasant and it affected because tourism is now the biggest industry in Key West. This was 1982.
Secretary General of the Conch Republic, Peter Anderson, heard news that the 478th Civil Affairs Battalion of the United States Army Reserve was planning on conducting a training exercise at Key West. The exercise was to simulate the invasion of a foreign island by landing on Key West as though it were not part of the United States, which, according to the Conch Republic, it wasn't. Because they had not been notified, the Conch Republic government protested to President Clinton, the Joint Chiefs, and the Secretary of State. However, despite these letters of protest, the 478th moved forward with the attack, and their act of simulating the invasion of a foreign land became a reality. They responded to the invasion by mobilizing for a full-scale war, which, in Conch Republic terms, meant firing water cannons from fireboats and hitting people with, you guessed it, stale Cuban bread. The 478th was forced to call off their exercise and issued a formal apology, saying that they in no way meant to challenge or impugn the sovereignty of the Conch Republic. The invasion instead became a friendly diplomatic visit, and the Conch Republic had finally received the recognition it felt it deserved.
Okay, notice that the stale Cuban bread. All right, this is very, as you can tell, they take this seriously in Key West. So there's very much active, and there's the Conch Republic. After they hit the naval officer with the stale bread, the Conch Republic surrendered to the United States and requested foreign aid as a surrendered foreign country. They requested $1 billion. They didn't get it. But there's a rumor that one of the 9/11 people, that terrorists, entered the United States on a Conch Republic passport.
Oh my God.
Is a rumor. I don't know if it's been true. Well, what else can you do with conch? You can make it into a fritter, and that is a staple appetizer, minced conch meat, and you mix it with a batter, and you deep fry it until golden. There you go, conch fritters. Well, one of the names of the famous resident, Ernest Hemingway, he had polydactyl cats. All right. Every year, there's a contest, Hemingway lookalikes at Sloppy Joe's bar, because Sloppy Joe's was a favorite haunt of Ernest Hemingway's. And there's sure a lot of people that look like Ernest Hemingway. That is what Sloppy Joe's used to look like when Ernest used to visit it. But Hemingway has ties to St. Louis. His first two wives were from St. Louis, Hadley Richardson on top.
Doing on that again.
And,
Come on, come back here.
and Martha Gellhorn. But she moved to Key West from Paris with his third wife, Pauline. So there he is. And this is his house. You can visit his house. It's a National Historic Landmark. Okay. And this is the room where Hemingway wrote some novels and whatever, wrote all his correspondence. And why they had polydactyl cats, his cats had 6 toes that made them polydactyl. And being cats, they, of course, paid no attention to the signs, but you're supposed to pay attention to these signs that say, do not pick up the cats. And only 3 blocks away from Ernest Hemingway was Tennessee Williams. Tennessee Williams lived 3 blocks away. This is a drawing of his house, which was a smaller, modest house in Key West. Truman Capote also lived in the Key West. He was a winter resident, and he was a fixture during the 50s and 60s in Key West. And he had a bar stool that was reserved for him at CTS. There's Truman, and here is the place. This was Captain Tony's Saloon, his favorite drinking place. He had his own bar stool. Judy Blume, you know her as somebody who wrote many, many books. She has a bookstore in Key West called Books and Books at the studios of Key West. It was co-founded by her and her husband in 2016. That's her and her husband. Oh, and what, did we miss a sign? Did we miss a last? Let me go back. Because there we go. This is the slide that we missed. This is one of her books that was written for children, actually. She has sold over 85 million copies of her books worldwide. 85 millions, and they've been translated into over 30 languages. So Judy Blume is quite something, and she's a resident of Key West. Shel Silverstein, you may not know him that well, but he didn't have the PR, I guess, that everybody else did. But I knew about him, but not everybody does. And he doesn't look like a happy man. But what impressed me is this is an old photograph of him, and he looks like he's a current living adult male. Just a beard with a shaven head is very popular now. It certainly wasn't popular in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, even into the 90s. Anyway, Shel Silverstein just did lots of things, including cartoons, books, poems, and songs, and he wrote A Boy Named Sue for Johnny Cash, and on the cover of the Rolling Stone, which is a song I like a lot. And right outside his house, there was a big banyan tree, and inspired this book called The Giving Tree, and that was a famous children's book by Shel Silverstein. Well, Shel Silverstein died, luckily, before Hurricane Irma hit the Keys. Hurricane Irma was 2017.
Oh,
This the banyan tree did to Shel
My
Silverstein's
God.
house.
You're a pest. Go on.
So the southernmost point of the United States, that's right there. There's the monument that all the tourists head for to get photographed next to. And it's only 90 miles to Cuba. Yes, and people have, I know of at least 3 people, including Diana Nyad, have swum the 90 miles. The first 2 people to swim it swam in a shark cage. Diana Nyad swam it without a shark cage. So she was
You ever see that? Diana.
Nyad. Yeah, Nyad. Nyad. Okay. So 90 miles from Cuba means that when the battleship Maine was blown up to start the start of the Spanish-American War, the dead seamen were brought to Key West, and they're buried in the cemetery in Key West, a certain plot right there. That is the sailor. The statue of the sailor identifies that it's their plot land, and they just couldn't identify this guy. It's a sailor that was on the USS battleship Maine, and that he was killed in the harbor. Nobody knows who he was. So it's unknown. Well, became a sensible place because it was so close to Cuba, because it was diplomatically important, that Harry S. Truman set up the little White House in Key West. He was a frequent visitor. His little White House, built way before it was originally built for naval officers. Lots of famous people have lived in it, including Thomas Edison, who was designing depth charges for the Navy in World War I. But Harry S. Truman was the noted resident, and he spent 147 days of his presidency, and he was dealing with the rebuilding of Europe, he was dealing with civil rights and all of that stuff from his house in Key West. And there he is with a sailor helping him. There's still a naval station there. And when President Eisenhower had a heart attack, and that was really scary to the nation. I couldn't believe it. I was a young teenager at the time, and he went to Key West, and he recovered in this building that Harry Truman had renovated. It was simple. That's if you go to Independence and visit Harry and Bess Truman's house, it's simple. It's simple. That's simplicity. But it's been used also by John F. Kennedy and Harold Macmillan. This was with the Bay of Pigs episode and trying to straighten things out. So it's been pretty busy. There's Truman. And even Jimmy Carter vacationed here, his family and friends. So it's been a popular spot. The Little White House is what it's called. And the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States and the European powers of France, Great Britain, and Germany had a private dinner with their spouses in 2000. So it's been used for all sorts of gatherings. Okay. And on the wall, Dewey defeats Truman.
Yeah.
Where was the picture of Harry Truman holding a newspaper,
Yep.
the Chicago Daily Tribune? Where was that photograph taken?
Here in St. Louis.
Correct.
In
Right.
the
Union Station.
Union Station.
Union Station. Well, let's look at utilities, because you've gotten all these tourists coming, and you've got all these things to you need stuff. For example, you need water because that's all seawater that you're looking at. There's no fresh water on the islands. There's no fresh water. So if you want drinking water, it's pumped from the mainland. It's pumped from the mainland. So here you have
Oh,
water pipe and the new highway, which is the 1980 version, and here's the 1935 version, which was the old railroad that got paved over and is now just for whatever people to walk on. Um, anyway, that pipe is the source of fresh water, source of drinking water for all the islands, all 43 of them that it goes through. Okay, so it's 130 miles long. Underground, it's buried, but on the side panels of bridges when it goes over across to the sea. And now it has to be maintained, and the part of it has to really be maintained is the coupling of the pipes. So here you have a corroded coupling, and some people working with it. They're, I think, reinforcing it. And so, but the fact that amazed me most of all is that it begins on the mainland, 36 inches in diameter, narrows to 24 inches of diameter, and ends in Key West at 18 inches diameter. This is the drinking water for all of Key West, 18 inches diameter. 18 inches is the size of an extra large pizza. That's it. That's it. And that's the water is going to supply all of Key West. And some people may have roofs that collect water and have cisterns, but that's where Key West gets its water. Also, electricity that comes from the mainland too. Electricity is from the mainland because it's cost effective. Otherwise, you have to generate it for each island and transmit it over wires. But a vulnerable transmission line that requires constant maintenance and certainly can be affected by hurricanes. So here, if you look, you get the old highway, which is the higher road, and you get the new highway, which is the 1980s highway, and that's the line that supplies electricity. It's going to go all the way to Key West, 130 miles, but it'll require constant maintenance. So you have helicopters that maintain this line. That helicopter is just hovering, and these guys are stepping on the skids of the helicopter.
oh my God.
And yes, that's actually what I was trained for in the Army was to be the crew chief of a helicopter, and I would supposed to travel with it, the helicopter that I maintained, and then to suppress ground fire, I was supposed to stand on the skids with a machine gun. That wasn't what I did, but in any event, it's just the whole idea that those guys are confident enough and that it's steady enough to do such work. Okay, here is what happened with Hurricane Irma. Many trucks had to fix lines after the hurricane. So you can easily lose power. After a hurricane. And the transmission line is called a 30-mile long extension cord. Well, let's go the other way. What do you do with the trash and the yard debris and the recyclables that are created in the isles, in the Keys? Trash, let's look at trash first. Trash is trucked to Medley, Florida, 161 miles from Key West, or Lake Okeechobee, 200 miles from Key West. That's your household trash, trucked 200 miles. Imagine what your bills are that you have to pay for your truck, this truck. The recyclables only is 172 miles. Pembroke Pines, that's also on the mainland. And then the waste, yard waste, you process it in the Keys because you can easily compost your palm fronds in the Keys. So you have your yard waste processed in the Keys. Now, my most exciting part of my visit to the Keys was the visit to the Dry Tortugas. It's 70 miles west of Key West. And that is the main island in the Dry Tortugas. And you'll see that there's a big building behind there. That is the largest masonry structure in the Western Hemisphere, made with 13 million bricks. And it's now a national park, called the Dry Tortugas National Park, but I'm going to call it Fort Jefferson, its original name, and was built to defend basically the Gulf of Mexico. And it was built to defend. They started building the fort in 1840. Any direction, north, south, east, west, there would be 100 cannon can fire at enemy ships. It turned out to not be that handy, but at the time they thought it was going to work. But it luckily stayed in Union hands during the Civil War. It was used as a prison after the war, and every tree on the island was chosen for its medicinal uses. They weren't chosen because they were shady or because they were easy to grow, nor they were fruit trees, traded because they were planted because they were medicinal trees. All right. So I traveled. There are two ways to get to Dry Tortugas. One way is by boat, and the other way is by seaplane. Oh, seaplane was too expensive for me. I paid for a boat ticket, which back then was $165, and I thought it was worth it. But I got seasick, and a lot of people on the boat got seasick. This is a 2.5 hour trip from Key West to the Dry Tortugas. And I don't know if you've ever been seasick, but it's a really rotten feeling. But it's easily cured. And you're cured by stepping on solid ground.
Yeah.
It goes away. And you just can't believe it. I've been seasick twice in my life, and it just goes away once you step on solid ground. And but you're tired because you spent a lot of time vomiting.
Oh God!
Nothing to vomit, and sometimes you couldn't get the toilets and stuff were so busy with other people vomiting. You had a hard time holding it in. Anyway, a lot of people who took the boat booked a plane to come back. And it's $500 to take a plane.
Oh.
Now that's a round trip ticket on the plane, I think nowadays. But and anyway, they booked a seaplane for the return trip. So these are my photographs from the fort. You can see it has a moat around it even. And here are all the gun emplacements, lots of them. Here's a cannon, which they found somewhere. They should have found more than one. Lots of pelicans around. And then Dr. Mudd's cell.
Oh.
Dr. Mudd's cell. Who was Dr. Mudd? Let's go to Washington, D.C. Abraham Lincoln's assassination. Okay, the assassination of President Lincoln. John Wilkes Booth snuck up on behind Lincoln. He assassinated him with a knife, and he jumped off from the president's little booth or little box, the president's box, to the stage and shouted, "Sic tempus tyrannis," which means thus will be tyranny.
Tyrants.
But in jumping, he injured his leg. And the next day, he found a doctor who would set set his leg, and that was Dr. Samuel Mudd. And people got very upset, obviously, because Lincoln died, and Wilkes Booth there was people that supported Booth that kind of knew what Booth was up to, and actually there were people that were supposed to assassinate other federal officials, like the Secretary of State Seward was supposed to be assassinated at the same time Lincoln. There was this whole big plot situation going on, and people just couldn't get over who would be so kind as to set the assassin of the president's leg. So they wanted to punish Mudd. They almost convicted him and had him hanged, but instead, because he said he didn't know who Wilkes was, he was sentenced to Fort Jefferson. So at Fort Jefferson, was Mudd just a innocent person, or innocent doctor who was following the Hippocratic oath, and helping a person in pain that needed medical help? He became a folk hero. He stayed at Fort Jefferson, which was an army base, Navy base. I'm not sure. And what happened is had a little epidemic, and he was very instrumental in saving people's lives. And that's when President Andrew Johnson pardoned him, and he got off the island. But he became a folk hero, and but he could have also been a Southern sympathizer, because he had slaves. He had owned slaves. Bud Mudd had owned slaves, and so forth. And some of his slaves had testified against him. So Southern sympathies. So perhaps he wasn't so innocent, but he was confined to Fort Jefferson. There was absolutely no chance of escape. All right. So the bad things about living in the Keys, the cons of living in the Keys. It's a high cost of living. Well, you can see when your garbage is trucked 200 miles. Most of the jobs, because tourism is now the biggest source of income for the Keys, it's low paying. And there's only one road. Any accident or a person taking photographs of a little deer, can tie up the traffic, and it can be tied up for hours. And it's really messy when you're told to evacuate because another hurricane is coming.
Yeah.
And you have to drive to the mainland if you want some advanced medical help, or certain car repairs that cannot be done on the little car shops on the islands. So those are some cons. Here's some more cons. Tropical storms and hurricanes. You're just vulnerable. And then there are pests, mosquitoes. We all know what mosquitoes are. I don't know if anybody has experienced no-see-ums. Anybody in the group except me? They're really annoying, tiny insects that just bite you all over wherever your flesh is showing. And the only thing is to run indoors and close the door. They're very, very annoying. And there's no Walmart, there's no Target on the islands. You have to go for a big box store. You have to drive all the way to the mainland. And anywhere there's water, there's something that you share that you can find in the water. There could be crocodiles in the water. There could be snakes in the water. There could be sharks in the water, even though some sharks, like when I was a kid, I grew up near Long Island Sound, and it had nurse sharks, and you could actually catch them with your hand if you wanted, because their babies came close to the shore. But when they're adults, they like their tummy rubbed. Anyway, that's a shark, but a Portuguese man of war. Portuguese man of war is a very, very odd thing. I was swimming in the Atlantic off of Miami Beach, and I heard a scream, and this guy near me who was also swimming must have been doing the backstroke, and he backstroked into a Portuguese man of war, and I would swear that he ran ashore on top of the water. He was so scared that he was on top of the water. He just got out of there. So that's a con, that the water isn't always as wonderful as you think. But what are the pros? The pros of living in the Keys? Let's see. Drop dead gorgeous. Yes, yes. Great if you love the water and you have a sense of community, because these Keys are not very big. You have local events and celebrate island lifestyle. You have a low crime rate, so you can walk the streets anytime of night without great worry. And then it's just world-class boating, fishing, snorkeling, and diving, especially the snorkeling where you can, and the diving where you can get the water's crystal clear. And it's laid back. People work on island time. They don't rush about, hurry much. And it's consistently warm. The climate is balmy. It's year round. There's never any snow. There's no low property taxes. That's local. And there's no income tax. That's the state of Florida. No income tax in Florida. There's corporate tax and sales tax. That's how Florida makes its money. So that's going to be the end of our show. And I'm going to stop the share. And that is our little visit to the Keys of Florida. Does anybody have a comment or a question?
Yeah. Wasn't Lincoln shot?
Well,
I've always thought he was shot.
I always did, but the illustration that shows it.
Well, the illustration.
Yeah.
He was
It's
shot. He had
suspect.
a Derringer that he used. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a single shot Derringer. He shot him in the head.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, but I guess he had a knife.
Yeah,
just-
he had a knife. There was another soldier in the booth in the thing there, and he tried to stop him, and he cut him with the knife. He had both a knife and a Derringer. But on that topic, sort of generally, when you're talking about Dr. Mudd, oftentimes people assume that the Mudd Grove in Kirkwood is connected to Dr. Mudd, the Lincoln assassination person. I asked that question when I was doing a tour of the grove, of the Mudd Grove one time, and not the same person at all. He is, however, the Mudd Grove in Kirkwood is associated with Roger Mudd, the correspondent.
Okay.
Oh.
Enough useless information for me. Sorry.
Okay. Any other comments?
Also a longtime friend of my late partner Dennis, who was in the Peace Corps with this one gay guy. This guy worked for years at the community college in Key West, and he talked about what the life was like that.
Mhm.
And and taking forever. And I think at least at that time there was a Kmart either in Key West or that was about the closest big store that was there. You probably had to go to the mainland for that. Also, it was about 10 years ago, I guess. I did some diving in Marathon, and the reefs were still had aquatic life and all of that, so it was great. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
One more thing. I think it's Shel Silverstein. I've heard it. I don't know the guy, but I've heard it pronounced on television and stuff. So I think it is.
I think he used to do cartoons for like Playboy
Oh, yeah.
magazine and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
he
He was pretty
did a
well
whole
known.
lot of cartoons.
He did.
Yeah,
He,
yeah.
he was very prolific. Very prolific.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop the recording if I can figure it out.